Triple H has had a long and varied career in WWE. Who would have thought that the guy who got smashed in 90 seconds at WrestleMania 12 would later receive universal acclaim for his booking of WrestleMania 40? But I feel confident in saying that Triple H will never have a more roller coaster year than he had in 2002. I cannot remember another wrestler that had, in one 12-month window, not just such a wide variety of opponents, but also such a wide variety of quality, both in terms of matches and storylines. Triple H's year started off in the best way possible. He'd spent most of 2001 on the sidelines after tearing his quad, which caused him to miss the entirety of the Invasion angle. His triumphant return came on the year's first episode of Raw, emanating from Madison Square Garden, when he received one of the loudest return ovations in WWE history. Despite being a hated heel when he got injured, some excellent video packages set to U2's Beautiful Day had led the fans to respect his drive and determination. And you could tell he'd put in the work just by looking at him, as he was so ripped and muscular that it actually looked like a hindrance to him. The game carried that momentum into the Royal Rumble, where he entered at number 22 to come face to face with his former tag team partner Steve Austin. They weren't alone in the ring together for long, as the Hurricane ran in next to give us one of the best moments in Royal Rumble history before he was quickly eliminated. Triple H went on to win the match for the first time in his career, last eliminating Kurt Angle, to punch his ticket to the main event of WrestleMania 18. But first he had some family business to take care of. He was still married to Stephanie McMahon in storyline, even though they were now on different sides of the heel-face spectrum. Stephanie then claimed she was pregnant, which led to a marriage renewal ceremony being scheduled for Raw. But when he found out it was all a trick, Triple H dumped her in the middle of the ring, in one of the better soap opera moments the company's ever done. Steph then aligned herself with his WrestleMania opponent and undisputed champion, Chris Jericho. This, however, turned out to be to the match's detriment, with the feud turning into Triple H versus Stephanie rather than Triple H versus Jericho. The world champion felt like an afterthought in his own Mania main event, and when you combine that with Rock and Hogan completely capturing the fans' imagination, Triple H's big title win in the main event felt disappointingly underwhelming. The match actually is pretty good, but sadly, the crowd just wasn't invested. Hunter didn't hold the title for long though. Heading into Backlash, Hulk Hogan would ride the wave of momentum he'd carried from WrestleMania into getting a title shot against the new champion. It was the second dream match Hogan would have in as many pay-per-views, but unfortunately this one just didn't click in the same way. And after some interference from The Undertaker, Triple H's title reign was over after just 35 days, and already it felt like the momentum from his comeback was stalling. He had a rematch with Jericho at Judgment Day inside Hell in a Cell, where he won with a pedigree on the roof of the cage. This match might be best remembered for referee Tim White separating his shoulder after being driven into the cell, which put an end to his full-time refereeing career. Hunter then set his sights on the undisputed title once again, and entered a battle royal to determine the number one contender. He co-won this match with Hulk Hogan after both men's feet touched the floor at the same time. This led to a one-on-one battle in the main event of the same SmackDown, with Triple H getting his win back from the month before. He was on his way to King of the Ring to face new champion The Undertaker. But when people talk about the legendary matches that these two have had, there's a reason why this one is not on that list. Triple H had picked up another injury, this time a groin problem that would keep him out of the ring for about a month. And The Undertaker wasn't in the best shape either. All this culminated in a severely disappointing pay-per-view main event that Undertaker won with a roll-up. In the time following WrestleMania, Triple H had been assigned to SmackDown following the first WWE draft. However, the recently returned Shawn Michaels convinced him to come back to Raw in order to reform D-Generation X. It seemed like the reunion was on, but then Triple H immediately turned on Michaels, hitting him with a pedigree and turning heel. It seemed unbelievable that the man who had received such a rapturous reception 6 months ago had turned to the dark side so soon after, but it turned out it was for the best. An unsanctioned match was scheduled between the two for SummerSlam, which would be Michaels' first WWE match in 4.5 years. On the go-home Raw, we saw a bit of an end of an era, as Triple H would have his last one-on-one match with one of his greatest ever rivals, The Rock. The match between Shawn and Hunter at SummerSlam is well up there as one of my favourite matches of all time, and was the cherry on top of one of WWE's best ever pay-per-views. Triple H was really playing to his strength as a dastardly villain, and Michaels, unbelievably, was just as good as people remembered him being even after 4 years away. Michaels got the win, but was laid out by Hunter afterwards with a sledgehammer. The following night, he confronted the new WWE champion Brock Lesnar, although this teased match wouldn't happen, as Lesnar was moving to SmackDown exclusively. Anyone whose appetite was whetted for this encounter would have to wait a full 10 years to see it. With the WWE title staying on the blue brand, Raw GM Eric Bischoff reintroduced the big gold belt as the World Heavyweight Championship, and it was handed to Triple H on the spot, beginning his 6th world title reign in maybe the most underwhelming fashion imaginable. In fairness to him, he did successfully defend the belt against Ric Flair on the same night. Flair would eventually align with Triple H in a successful title defense over Rob Van Dam at Unforgiven, which planted the seeds for the stable that would eventually become Evolution. And then Triple H entered a rivalry with Kane, which would culminate at No Mercy, where he beat the Big Red Machine to absorb and dissolve the Intercontinental title. As bad as that is, the storyline leading up to it was even worse. So much has been said about the notorious Katie Vick storyline that I don't think I need to go into it here. Or maybe I just don't want to. But suffice to say, it was wretched, and maybe the lowest point of any World Championship reign in the history of the company. But after such a horrific negative, he went straight into a massive positive, with the first ever Elimination Chamber match being scheduled for Survivor Series, in Madison Square Garden no less, where Trips' topsy-turvy year began. He defended his world title against Kane, Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Chris Jericho, and Shawn Michaels, who had come back from the injuries he sustained at Hunter's hands. After the game had received a thunderous roar from the MSG crowd in January, it was the Heartbreak Kid's turn in November, pinning Triple H with sweet chin music to win the World Heavyweight Championship to deafening roars from the New York crowd. Sadly, this title reign wasn't meant to last, as at the final pay-per-view of the year, Armageddon, Triple H regained the belt in a 3 stages of hell match, and his infamous reign of terror on top of Raw would continue well into 2003. But that was the year of Triple H in 2002, and when you look at it in completion, the spectrum of good and bad is unbelievable. On one hand, he had an all-time great return from injury, won the Royal Rumble, main evented WrestleMania, had one of the best matches in SummerSlam history and one of the best matches in Survivor Series history, with a couple of World Championships thrown in for good measure. On the other hand, there was a disappointing dream match with Hulk Hogan, maybe the worst match he ever had with The Undertaker, and potentially the worst storyline that WWE has ever produced, which resulted in the Intercontinental title being abolished. It was truly a year of highs and lows for the game. So let's keep our fingers crossed that his 2024 and beyond are a bit more unanimously positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, consider hitting the like button, sharing it around, and subscribing to the channel.